Now, with a few percentage points more than its competitors, Moderna says its COVID-19 vaccinations appear to be 94.5% effective, according to their preliminary data. Some 30,000 participants took part in its clinical trial, the results bringing more hope after similar results from other companies earlier in the month. Moderna's vaccine, like that of Pfizer and BioNTech, are based on a new technology that uses synthetics to hack into human cells. James Vecina reports.
They claim it's the most effective vaccine against COVID-19 so far. A second glimmer of hope that the battle against the virus could be nearing its end. Moderna says its vaccine is 94.5% effective and hopes to get it out by the end of the year.
The first agreement that we reached with the US government was for an order of 100 million doses. So we anticipate to be able to ship up to 20 million of those 100 million before the end of the year. So we are making product, as you know, every day and stockpiling it. And assuming we get the green light from the FDA, I would say sometime in December, I'm sure General Perna from Operation Warp Speed will be ready with the trucks to load the product and to distribute it in the US via the CDC guidelines.
Of the 30,000 participants in the study, half of them were given a placebo rather than the vaccine. A first analysis found that of 95 participants who'd gone on to contract COVID-19, 90 of them had received the placebo, while only 5 who developed mild symptoms were given the drug. Moderna claims it's particularly effective with more fragile patients and that doses can be stored in a fridge or a freezer for up to 30 days. A step well ahead of rival company Pfizer, whose vaccine proved to be 90% effective but must be kept below 80 degrees Celsius. The lifespan could allow for wider distribution, but some say it's still too early to cheer.
For now, this is a business announcement, not a scientific one. We don't know how long the immunity lasts. The trial has only been going for 2 months.
If approved, the company hopes to ship out 1 billion doses next year. 2 doses taken 2 weeks apart are required for protection against COVID-19.
Well, more positive news about a potential vaccine against COVID-19 sent shares on Wall Street to a record high in Monday's trading. Asian markets a little more cautious about the news from drugs company Moderna. Well, for the latest, we can speak to our business editor, Stephen Carroll. Stephen, let's start maybe by telling us what's happening on the markets today.
Things that little bit calmer in Asian trading today, not quite the record highs that we saw on Wall Street on Monday, although one cross-Asian index, the MSCI, has hit a record high in trading today as well. A couple of reasons for this, according to market traders. They're saying that, because of the big surge in optimism that we had last week, things are a little bit more muted this week on the results of this second vaccine after Pfizer reporting its results from its late-stage trials last week. So investors perhaps adjusting a bit more to the situation where a vaccine looks more likely and perhaps in a shorter time frame than we had previously been expecting. The other issue is that, particularly for Chinese shares, is that we did see China getting the virus largely under control in the country, so it's less perhaps of an impact of a vaccine there as there would be in places like Europe and in North America, where case numbers are still very high. So that's another element perhaps playing into investors' concerns today. On the Asian markets, we did see gains on the Nikkei in Tokyo, but falls on the Shanghai Composite and on the Kospi in Seoul. Hong Kong trading pretty flat a short time ago as well. There's still this rotation trade going on. This is where investors are moving away from the so-called stay-at-home stocks, the Zooms and Amazons, those companies that have done very well during recent months because of the effects of the pandemic, and back into the companies that would do well should a vaccine be in place. Travel companies, notably, if we think about airline shares, Cathay Pacific shares in Hong Kong up by 6% today, gains too for Air China and also for Qantas in Australia. So those companies still standing, of course, to get some optimism from if a vaccine to be put in place. European shares for the moment called to open lower today. Of course, investors looking at the broader picture as well, keeping an eye on what's happening with stimulus negotiations in the United States, but also those high case numbers that we're still getting from many countries in Europe.
Speaking there, though, Stephen, of travel, and Airbnb has made two big announcements. One, that it has returned to profit despite the slump in travel, and secondly, that it's launching on the stock market. What more can you tell us?
Both elements of that announcement having a little bit of surprise in it. Certainly the return to profit is good news for Airbnb. Between July and September of this year, the company reporting a profit of $219 million. And that's despite revenues for that period falling, being down almost 20% for that 3-month period. However, if you look at the picture since the start of the year, you can really see the impact the pandemic has had on Airbnb's business. A loss for those first 9 months of the year of almost $700 million. That's more than double the loss the company registered for the same period last year. And some of the explanation of how they got back to profit in the last 3 months is to do with cost cutting. The company slashing, for example, its advertising budget for the first 9 months of the year, down $400 million. And it also announced job cuts earlier this year, 1,900 jobs axed at the company. That's around 25% of its workforce. So that's helping to contribute to those better figures in the later months of the year. The other element of this, Airbnb announcing its initial public offering of shares. It had been expected to happen earlier this year, but of course the pandemic delayed that as well. What we've learned about Airbnb's initial documents they filed for the stock market launch is that they're hoping to raise $3 billion in an initial sale of shares. That'll value the company at somewhere, according to media reports, between $25 and $30 billion. Now, back in April, when Airbnb had to raise emergency funding of $2 billion, it was valued at only $18 billion. So things looking certainly more optimistic from the company's point of view if they're hoping for a valuation of 25 to 30 billion in this initial public offering, initially set for December of this year. Airbnb, of course, very much affected by that slump in travel, but they have gotten business from an increase in people looking for places to work remotely, looking for more space, perhaps getting out of cities. So there's some business to be got from that as well. But really, like so many companies in this sector, they need a vaccine to be in place. They need global travel to be able to return to the sort of business that they had before the pandemic struck.
Stephen, for now, thanks very much indeed. Stephen Carroll there, our business editor. Well, meanwhile, queuing up to buy a promised land, sales of former President Barack Obama's memoir is expected to do well. Over 700 pages that readers will bring readers from his childhood right up to the killing of Osama bin Laden in 2011. A book about his time in office, but it also comments on what and who came after him, as our correspondent Ketavan Gorjestani tells us.
The book goes all the way to May 2011, so we're not yet talking about the end of Obama's term in office. We're not yet talking about Donald Trump, but the president, the current president, is definitely in Barack Obama's memoirs. And the genesis, possibly, of how Donald Trump came to be in one sentence in this book. It was as if my very presence in the White House had triggered a deep-seated panic, a sense that the natural order had been disrupted. This, of course, the fact that he was a black man walking into the White House, and he feels that this racial tension that he brought in the White House for a certain part of the population partly expressed and explained why Donald Trump later came into office. And as much as he doesn't really dwell on Donald Trump in his book, he has used the promotion of his book here in the United States by doing interviews on different networks and going after the president multiple times, especially about the fact that Donald Trump has not recognized this election, has not recognized Joe Biden as the new president. And he repeated something that was actually the words that he left on that note for Donald Trump as that transition back in 2016 was happening. He said that we are only temporary occupants of the White House. When your time is up, it's time to put the country first. And Barack Obama has said in multiple interviews that he feels Donald Trump is not putting the country first.
Okay, going to have to take a quick break now, but back with all the latest updates in just a few minutes.
Are you